September 4, 1943, 10,000 feet above the Pacific. Japanese pilots laughed when they first saw it, a fat, clumsy-looking American fighter that looked more like a tractor than a warplane. They called it ugly. But within months, that same ugly fighter would own the Pacific skies, destroying the legendary Zero with a kill ratio of 19-1. This is the story of the Hellcat, the plane Japan mocked, until it ruled the war. Dawn over the Pacific, first encounters, and the ugly duckling. September 4, 1943, 10,000 feet above an indifferent stretch of ocean east of Guadalcanal. The sky is a clean, cruel blue, too bright for sleep. In the cockpit of a carrier-based fighter, Lieutenant James, Jimmy, Hayes buries his face in the tiny oculus of the gun sight and feels the plane under him like a living, awkward animal, its fuselage broad, tail a blunt wedge, its nose knobby with a prop that seems almost boastful. Steam from his breath fogs the glass for a second. Salt stings his throat. His palm finds the leather-worn stick, and he thinks, with the superstition pilots always keep close, she looks ugly. Below the sea churns in plates of pale and dark. The carrier's wake draws a silver line back toward a distant, humming black dot, the task force that has given him this day. On deck, men in grease-stained jerseys scream and wave, pistons thunder. A mechanic's face, smeared with oil, lifts in a brief salute. The Hellcat's engine rumbles, deep and confident, and Jimmy feels the aircraft respond with a shove that is too honest to be vanity. Across the sky and closer to the enemy, the Japanese formation turns, and there is laughter, sudden, sharp, contemptuous, carried on radio waves that the Americans intercept later as dry reports tucked into squadron logs. The pilots of the Imperial Japanese Navy peer through their round, delicate canopies and see the new Grumman F6F, stubby, beefy, almost comical next to their lithe, long-winged Zeros. Lieutenant Nakamura, a young flight leader with a thoughtful face and a cigarette stub tucked into his collar, snorts aloud when he sees the Hellcat's ungainly lines. Ugly as a landing barge, he tells his wingman, this one will be easy. That laughter is not arrogance in the abstract, it is earned confidence. For the Zero has been the Pacific's ballet, a machine that dances, climbs, slips and kills with a fluid poetry American pilots have been trying to learn. It is light, it is nimble, it trusts its pilot to do the rest. In early 1943, the Zero's reputation is not just fame, it is doctrine. Against it, machines that trade agility for protection look clumsy. But machines have hidden languages: structure, engine torque, firepower, the cold arithmetic of weight and speed. The Hellcat does not look like it will be graceful, it looks like it will win. In Jimmy's rearview mirror, the carrier's island is a distant, harmless blot. Ahead, the lead Japanese unit splits into V-shaped boomerangs. Radio calls crackle, bogies bearing 020. Altitude 10,000, intercept vector. Jimmy's squadron, VF, checks in names, ranks, the quick ritual of identification. Lieutenant J.G. Robert Finch, the squadron's veteran, wipes his brow and shouts, watch the wingtips, don't get cute. The first turn is misunderstanding made concrete. Nakamura's flight dives, confident in the Zeros turning radius and climb. They expect to hook inside the Hellcats and bleed them of speed. The Hellcat, however, is built around a different promise. A powerful Pratt & Whitney radial with torque to spare, and a broad wing that carries weight without complaint. As the red and white sun-spattered planes close, compression of the air makes the sky smell metallic. The Hellcat's heavier frame resists the tightest of snaps without the wing screaming. Gunsmoke flowers between the formations, short, almost polite bursts at first. The Hellcat's 6 50 caliber Browning machine guns answer without hesitation, each round a hard, honest punctuation. When a Zero bleeds into the wrong zone, the Hellcat doesn't dance away. It stands, it returns fire, and the hits are visceral. Fabric tearing, oil spitting, an engine coughing like a man losing breath. A Japanese pilot's scream is audible in the radio log later, the tiny voice of panic before silence. A wingman in Jimmy's flight, Ensign Thomas Rivera, pushes his stick forward and feels the Hellcat take him down in a long, rock-solid dive that the Zero cannot sustain. Rivera's rounds find a seam, and a Zero ricochets like a struck fish into the ocean. For the Japanese watchers, the first body hits the water and the laughter dies in an instant, the pleasant, casual mockery replaced by a different sound, the cold, private calculation of loss. On deck later, a line of mechanics leans under cowlings and exchanges glances that do not need words. Ugly, one of them says softly, and then with a grin that has teeth, but she bites. Back in the closed world of the dogfight, each Hellcat begins to feel less like an awkward novelty and more like an insurance policy. The plane's armor deflects a shot that would have killed a Wildcat or a Mustang. Its climb rate, while not as poetic as a Zero's, is sudden enough to surprise, and its guns, heavy and relentless, are not shy. The Japanese pilots who mocked the bulging cowling and wide fuselage now find themselves recalculating angles and retreat vectors. Nakamura's grin has evaporated into a thin line of focus. He signals a withdrawal. Discipline replaces bravado. Above them all, a single Hellcat paint flacking, fuselage bearing the neat scars of repeated carrier landings, tracks the horizon. It is not beautiful. It will not be painted into a poster for its grace. But when its guns speak, they leave a different kind of grammar in the air, the sound of a shift in tempo. One plane, one engagement cannot rewrite doctrine. But the pilot in that cockpit, hands tight on the stick, feels the first thrust of a story being written in grease and gunmetal. The Hellcat's hidden power. October 1943, Pacific Theater, somewhere above Bougainville. The morning sun burns against the cockpit glass, turning the ocean into a field of white fire. Lieutenant Jimmy Hayes adjusts his oxygen mask and blinks sweat from his eyes. His Hellcat hums like a sleeping giant, steady, heavy, certain. Down below, the carrier USS Essex slices the Pacific in silence. Around him, his squadron forms a loose diamond. 6 blue-gray aircraft, each as inelegant as a sledgehammer, cutting across a sky that once belonged to the Japanese Zero. In the early days, pilots joked that the Hellcat looked like a barrel with wings. It was not fast to climb, not quick to turn, not the kind of plane that would win a beauty contest or an air show. But Grumman engineers had built something else, a flying fortress that could absorb punishment and strike back harder. Beneath its broad skin lay self-sealing fuel tanks, armor plating for the pilot, and an engine, the Pratt & Whitney R2800 Double Wasp, that could rip through air like a beast unleashed. At 2,000 horsepower, the Hellcat didn't dance, it charged. On this particular morning, the air is quiet until the radios crackle. Bandits 11 o'clock high, Zeros inbound. Jimmy tightens his harness. Across his canopy, he can see the sun glint off the silver wings of Japanese fighters, a dozen Zeros diving in graceful formation. Even from here, they look elegant, almost delicate. They move like arrows, slicing down through the sky. He remembers what they used to say, if you see a Zero, you run. Not today, not in a Hellcat. The Japanese formation, led by Lieutenant Nakamura once again, spots the American flight and commits to an attack. Nakamura's mind flashes with arrogance wrapped in discipline. He's killed 7 enemy pilots in 6 months. He's fought Wildcats, Dauntlesses, even a few P-38s, and always won. But this new American plane looks wrong. Big, slow, an easy kill. He signals to his wingman, "Follow my lead." The dive begins, wind screams, the ocean grows. Zeros roll into firing position, sunlight flashing off their fuselages. They aim for the Hellcat's lumbering targets, fat bellies gleaming. But when the distance closes, the Hellcats move in a way no Zero expects. Jimmy jerks his stick back, and the F6F climbs, not elegantly, but violently, the torque surging through his body. A Zero overshoots, its pilot blinking in surprise. The Hellcat rolls, its wide wings banking hard, and Jimmy's guns find the Japanese plane's tail. 6 .50 caliber Brownings roar. The sky becomes smoke and flame. The Zero disintegrates in a single burst. Its light frame, built for speed but not for survival, cannot bear the Hellcat's ferocity. Shards of aluminum scatter like falling confetti. Nakamura curses not at the kill, but at the audacity of it. This American plane shouldn't be able to climb that way. It shouldn't be able to take a dive like that and pull out. But it can, and it just did. Another Zero dives from behind, guns blazing. Tracers rake the Hellcat's fuselage. Bullets punch into metal, sparks fly, and then nothing. The armor holds. Inside the cockpit, Jimmy feels each impact like a distant hammer, but the plane doesn't shudder, doesn't break. He grins, "That all you got." He throws the Hellcat into a split S, trading altitude for position. The Zero follows, too light to match the dive's momentum. Jimmy levels out below, rolls, and fires upward. The Zero erupts into flame. A voice crackles on the radio. 2 down, repeat, 2 confirmed down. The sky fills with turning, diving, twisting shapes, blue-gray against white and silver. Each pilot learns in minutes what no report can teach. The Hellcat's ugliness is its disguise. It is not built to look dangerous. It is built to be dangerous. By the end of the engagement, 5 Japanese planes fall. No Hellcats are lost. When Jimmy lands back on the Essex, his boots hit the deck and he stumbles from the adrenaline. Deckhands crowd around, slapping his shoulders, pointing at the bullet dents peppered across his fuselage. One round sits half embedded near the cockpit glass. He pries it loose, turns it in his fingers, and smiles. "Ugly," he says, echoing the old insult, "but she's tougher than any beauty I've met." That night in the wardroom, the pilots swap stories. One man claims his Hellcat took 20 hits before he even noticed. Another brags about blowing a zero out of the sky from half a mile. The laughter is loud, the coffee cold, the exhaustion real, but beneath the noise runs something new, belief. Across the ocean, in a darkened hangar at Rabaul, Japanese mechanics pull wreckage from the surf. They study the bullet-riddled remains of a Zero, its thin skin shredded. A pilot walks by Nakamura, silent, his cigarette burning low. For the first time, he feels a flicker of unease. The Americans have changed the rules. The Zero is a blade. The Hellcat is a hammer. And hammers win wars of endurance. Turning points when the Hellcat ruled the sky. June 19, 1944, the Philippine Sea. The dawn breaks like a furnace. Across the endless Pacific, the morning light turns aircraft carrier decks into sheets of molten gold. Engines cough, then roar. Black oil smoke swirls into the humid air. On the flight deck of the USS Lexington, dozens of blue-gray Hellcats line up, their wings folded like the arms of giant birds waiting to strike. This is no routine patrol. It's the opening act of what would become known as the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot, the day Japan's air power broke against the armor of America's new war machine. Lieutenant Jimmy Hayes, now a seasoned pilot with 20 sorties behind him, checks the gauges one last time. The deck officers' flags flash forward. The engines howl. The entire carrier trembles beneath him as the first Hellcat rockets into the air, then another, wave after wave of them, climbing into the blue. Over the radio, the chatter is calm, measured, men who have fought too long to be nervous. Lexington Squadron airborne, rendezvous at Angels 20. Jimmy smiles behind his mask. Let's go hunting. Far to the west, Japanese carriers Shikaku and Zuikaku cut through the sea. Inside one ready room, Lieutenant Nakamura adjusts his flight gloves, surrounded by younger pilots, boys, barely 20, fresh from accelerated training programs. They are brave but untested. He feels a tightness in his chest that has nothing to do with the altitude. He had once laughed at the Hellcat, now he knows better. Today, he must lead men into a sky ruled by it. Remember, he says quietly, we have skill, we have spirit. But even as he says it, his mind betrays him with another thought. Spirit doesn't stop bullets. By mid-morning, radar operators aboard the US fleet begin to shout. Bandits inbound, 300 miles out. The airwaves erupt with clipped voices. The Japanese are coming, hundreds of them. Hellcat squadrons rise to meet them, blue arrows against red. From 20,000 feet up, Jimmy sees the horizon darken with dots, planes upon planes, filling the sky like locusts. He exhales slowly. Here they come. The first wave collides in a chaos of traces and smoke. Zeros dive in tight spirals, trying to break through the Hellcat screen and reach the American carriers. But the Americans have learned no more reckless dogfights, no more chasing. They fight smart, two-plane teams, cover each other, exploit the Hellcat's power. A Zero dives straight at Jimmy's wingman. Jimmy banks hard, cutting across the Japanese pilot's line of fire. He squeezes the trigger, the Brownings thunder. The Zero disintegrates before it can pull away, fragments spiraling toward the ocean. On the deck of the Lexington, crewmen cheer as parachutes bloom in the distance, American pilots returning safely, Japanese aircraft burning. One gunner mutters, it's a massacre. He's right, in a single day the Hellcats shoot down more than 350 Japanese planes. Some American pilots score 5, 6, even 7 kills in a single sortie. The Japanese, their veteran corps already thinned by years of attrition, never recover. When night falls, the sea glows with oil fires. The once mighty Japanese air fleet, the same that had dominated at Pearl Harbor, Coral Sea, and early in the war, is gone. On the Shikaku, Nakamura sits alone in the dim red light of the ready room. The few pilots who return are silent, their eyes hollow. The deck crew avoids looking at them. Outside, the sound of waves is broken only by the groan of the carrier's hull. He knows what it means. The Zero, that elegant machine that once danced like a dragonfly, is now a relic. Its era has ended not with ceremony, but with statistics. A 19-to-1 kill ratio, a number so absurd it sounds like rumor. In the days that follow, US carriers steam unchallenged across the Pacific. The Hellcat, once mocked as ugly, now becomes the symbol of domination. From the Marianas to the Philippines, it flies higher, lasts longer, and strikes harder. When it lands, deck crews paint small red circles on its nose, one for every Japanese aircraft destroyed. Some planes wear so many circles they look like floating scoreboards. Back in the States, newspapers headline, "The plane that won the Pacific." But to the pilots, it's simpler than that. It's not the looks, the numbers, or even the praise. It's the feeling, the deep, bone-deep certainty that when you fly a Hellcat, you come home. As Jimmy writes in his logbook that night aboard the Lexington, his handwriting shaky from exhaustion. They used to laugh at her, they don't laugh anymore. She's not pretty, she doesn't need to be. She's ours, and she's winning. Outside, the waves roll black and endless. The smell of oil and salt lingers in the air. Above them, stars bloom, bright, cold, and countless, like tracer fire frozen in time. The pilots behind the Hellcat. October 1944, the Philippines. The sea below is a dark mirror, broken only by the wakes of ships pushing toward Leyte Gulf. Night operations are underway. On the flight deck of the USS Enterprise, men move like shadows under red lights, silent, precise, disciplined. In the background, the muffled thunder of the ocean merges with the low, powerful growl of warming engines. The Hellcats are ready again. Lieutenant Jimmy Hay sits in his cockpit, waiting for clearance. His squadron, VF-15, has been flying almost without rest. The smell of oil, sweat, and salt clings to their flight suits like a second skin. Every man has aged a year for every month spent in the Pacific. Yet when the green signal flashes, Jimmy pushes the throttle forward and feels the familiar kick. The plane surges down the deck, the catapult slams, and the Hellcat leaps into the night. He knows this feeling too well now, that tightness in the stomach before every mission. But the Hellcat feels like home. It's a beast that forgives mistakes and shields its pilot from death more than any other plane he's flown. Out there under the stars, the sky belongs to whoever can survive the next 3 minutes. The mission tonight: intercept enemy bombers heading toward the invasion fleet near Leyte. The Japanese have thrown what remains of their air power into the fight, the desperate, scattered remains of once great carrier squadrons, now flying from land bases. Some are new planes, others barely held together with spare parts. Many pilots have less than 40 hours of flight time. The Americans call them kamikaze. The word is new, but the fear it carries is ancient. Jimmy levels off at 15,000 feet. Ahead, his radar operator guides him toward the incoming formation. Then, faint specks appear against the moonlit clouds, bombers slow and steady. The call goes out over radio: contact, engage. The Hellcats dive. Gunfire lights up the night. Streams of red tracers carve across the sky. Jimmy squeezes the trigger, his Brownings roar, and a Japanese bomber erupts into flame. The fireball reflects on his canopy for a heartbeat before vanishing into the Black Sea below. More targets appear, a mix of bombers and fighters weaving frantically, but it's not the same fight it once was. The Japanese attacks are uncoordinated, their formations broken. The once deadly Zeros are slower now, outdated, stripped of their former grace. The Hellcat pilots know it. They fight with ruthless precision. By dawn, the sky over Leyte is clear. The fleet remains intact. On the carrier's deck, Jimmy steps down from his Hellcat and looks at the bullet dents along the fuselage. The deck crew gathers around, touching the holes like they're touching a miracle. A mechanic whistles. She takes a beating, huh? Jimmy nods. That's why we love her. Elsewhere on a remote airstrip near Luzon, Lieutenant Nakamura stares at a cracked photograph tucked inside his flight jacket. It shows him with his first squadron, all smiling, all gone. The airfield around him is chaos: wrecked planes, fuel drums, and men preparing for missions they know they won't return from. He hears rumors, new American fighters everywhere, dominating every sky. The Hellcat, always the Hellcat. He closes his eyes for a moment. Once he had been the hunter, now he is the hunted. Perhaps, he mutters, beauty is not strength after all. He mounts his Zero, lighter than ever, its paint flacking. The engine coughs to life, tired but obedient. As he taxis toward the runway, he looks up and sees a speck high above, catching the morning sun. A blue-gray Hellcat circling, watching. The war, he realizes, is no longer a contest of pilots. It is a contest of endurance, and Japan has run out of time. That same month, Hellcat pilots record over 1,000 victories in less than 4 weeks. Carrier after carrier reports the same. Enemy resistance minimal. Air superiority complete. The aircraft that once drew laughter has become the standard bearer of Allied dominance. Pilots love its power. Mechanics love its reliability. Commanders love its statistics. Out of 12,000 built, nearly 75% see combat, and most come home. In every ready room across the Pacific, the chalkboards fill with names and tallies. 5 kills. Ace in a day. But the pilots don't boast much anymore. The early thrill has faded into something heavier, pride laced with fatigue. Jimmy sits by the porthole that night, writing a letter to his sister back home. You've probably seen pictures of the Hellcat by now. It's not much to look at, big, square, kind of ugly. But up here, that ugliness means something. It means I might see another sunrise. It means my friends come home. He signs the letter, folds it, and tucks it away before the next briefing call. The war rolls on, the sky waits, and the Hellcat, the ugly, unstoppable Hellcat, keeps flying. The plane that ruled the Pacific Seas. August 15, 1945, USS Lexington, anchored off Okinawa. The ship's loudspeakers crackle with static, then a trembling voice echoes across the decks. Japan has surrendered. I repeat, Japan has surrendered. For a long moment, no one speaks. The sea is calm, grey, endless. Then the silence breaks cheers, whistles, men shouting and hugging and laughing in disbelief. Deckhands throw their caps into the air. Pilots climb down from planes and embrace each other with tears streaking through soot. After years of war, it's over. Lieutenant Jimmy Hayes stands on the flight deck, staring out toward the horizon where smoke still curls from distant ships. Around him, a dozen Hellcats sit in neat rows, engines silent, wings folded. Their paint is scratched, their canopies clouded, but to him they look like monuments. Each scar, each bullet dent, is a line in a history written in courage. He runs a hand along the fuselage of his plane, the same one he's flown since 1943. The once fresh blue-grey paint has faded to dull steel, and under the cockpit glass, 27 small red circles are painted in tidy rows. 27 kills, 27 lives. He whispers, "You ugly old angel," and smiles. In the weeks that follow, the Hellcats begin their slow retirement. Newer aircraft, sleek jets and lighter fighters take their place on the decks, but the legend remains. In just 2 years of combat, the F6F Hellcat had achieved an almost mythical record: 5,163 enemy aircraft destroyed, the highest of any US Navy fighter in history. It wasn't the fastest, or the prettiest, or the most famous, but it was the one that won. Historians would later say the Hellcat was not just a fighter. It was a symbol of what America had learned by 1943, that wars aren't won by elegance, but by endurance.